After the defeat at Stalingrad, the German army on the Eastern Front had been in retreat. The Soviet force had steadily advanced east. However, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein managed to stop them at Kharkov, and up north Field Marshal Günther von Kluge was holding his position at Oryol. A bulge occurred near the town of Kursk. It was here the Soviet army concentrated its force, and here the German High Command organized a massive offense against Russia in what was called Operation Citadel. The plan was approved in May, but Hitler constantly delayed the operation, planning carefully every detail. However, this delay gave the Red Army 2 months to prepare the most heavily defended area in history. About 1 million anti-tank and anti-personnel mines were laid, and a huge number of artillery was concentrated here. The Red Army's 3 fronts: Central Front under the command of General Konstantin Rokossovsky, Voronezh Front under the command of General Nikolai Vatutin, and the Steppe Front under the command of General Ivan Konev, who was in reserve, gathered about 1.3 million men, 3,500 tanks, 19,000 guns and mortars, and about 2,700 aircrafts. The Red Army was determined to grit down the advancing German force. The German plan was to attack from 2 sides: Army Group Center under the command of Field Marshal Günther von Kluge from north, and Army Group South under the command of Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, with a large force of about 3,000 tanks, 800,000 men, 10,000 guns and mortars, and 2,100 aircrafts. On July 5th, both armies were ready for the battle. From reliable sources, the Soviets knew the exact time and date of the German attack. In order to demoralize the enemy before the attack, the Soviet commanders ordered an artillery strike on the supposedly German force location. The Germans fired back, but the losses were minimal, since the attack took place at night and neither side knew the exact position of the enemy force. Up north, the Germans began their advance as planned, and immediately stumbled upon the Russian defense, taking heavy casualties. They planned on advancing along the railway Oryol-Kursk and capture the village of Panyry, but the defense was too strong and the plan changed. They now centered their attack on Alkavatka. The Germans kept advancing, but the defense was very strong. They were met with heavy fire from artillery and air, and then the Russian tanks were sent in battle. Up in the air, a bloody battle was taking place for the control of the skies, making the German advance very difficult. Slowly the German advanced and took Alkavatka. They also managed to take the village of Panyry on the left flank and Teplaya on the right. They advanced about 60 miles, but Rokossovsky sent fresh troops from reserve. This, the heavy artillery fire and landmines neutralized the 9th Army under Walter Model's command, making them to go in defensive position and stop the north advance. Still, the main fight of this battle took place in the south. The Soviet command thought that the main enemy force would come from the north. They were wrong. The Germans divided their force here in 2. Army Group Kempf under the command of General Kempf and the 4th Panzer Army under the command of General Hoff, who decided to attack earlier. He advanced on July 4, attacking the Russian positions from air and artillery to clear the way. After, he sent the tanks to advance. The battle was very intense and the Russians had to retreat. The next morning, Hoff decides to change the original plan and concentrates his attack on left. The Soviet command didn't expect this, and the German forces smashed through their defensive position. They were using the Panzer Kiel tactic. Heavy Tiger tanks in front, Panthers on flanks, and the weaker Panzer III and IV tanks in center. It helped the Germans advance very fast. The main Soviet defense point in this region was the town of Obayan, and the Russians concentrated fresh troops here. Hoff was planning to attack it from the left flank, but realizing the city was heavily reinforced, he decides to outflank them from east. But by the time he got between Obayan and Prokhorovka, the Soviets already had fresh troops from the steppe front there. Kempf, who was advancing just south, now had to reunite with Hoff's army near Prokhorovka and with a combined force break through the Soviet defense. But their advance was slowed by the Soviet troops and they didn't get to the meeting point in time. Hoff engaged the enemy. First he sent an airstrike on the Russian positions. Now Hoff sent his tanks into the battle. The Russian tanks also advanced, but no one was expecting what was about to happen. 2 huge tank forces went head on head, and the tanks mixed together. It was the biggest concentration of armed force and the greatest tank battle in history. It wasn't clear who was friend or foe. Artillery and air support couldn't help their troops. The battle was intense. The casualties on both sides were very heavy, but the Red Army was sending fresh troops into battle, while Hoff had no reinforcement. The fight did not stop until nightfall. Both sides now had some time to rest and prepare for a new battle the next morning. But the next day Hitler ordered his soldiers to retreat. The reason was that the Western Allies mounted an amphibious invasion on Sicily, by that opening the second front. This is when the Red Army began a counterattack. They won battle after battle till they got to the gates of Berlin. But this is another story.